All right, happy Monday, AP World History students. Here we are. We're going to do our first e-learning lesson of the year. And for this one, in our Unit 1, when we're just kind of taking these snapshots in different places in different parts of the world, we're going to stop here in South and Southeast Asia, or India and its neighbors in Southeast Asia. And we're not going to go super in detail, super in depth in this lesson. It's just enough to give you a sense of what is happening in this part of the world during this period of time, 1200 to 1450, and enough to kind of help you along with some educated guesses, give you some big ideas that you can sort of put in your back pocket for when we move along to these places. So, India. We've been in India before. We've looked at India before. I want to just sort of return real big picture stuff, right? We've learned in this class like it tends to be more important to be able to hold some big picture ideas in your head and then apply them and analyze them in new situations than it is to just memorize all the stuff. So let's kind of go back to some big picture pieces that we hang on to for India, like big term continuities. The caste system, what a continuity, right? There's almost no system for continuity like that in the world. And so everyday life is still dictated by the rules of the caste system and the values of the caste system, that everybody has their place, everybody has a sort of built-in community, and that will stay the same in this lifetime. That provides sort of meaning for most people. And it is growing more complex. All right, the caste system isn't just those same old four castes plus the untouchables. There's all these thousands of these jati or these subcastes based on occupation, and it gets really, really complex. But the basic rules are the same, and how it is still sort of like tied in with the ideas of Hinduism, where if you do your dharma, right, and you build up good karma, and then you can be reincarnated at a higher caste. We've seen all that before, and I think the idea that really has that provides a lot of the everyday meaning stuff for people. And so India is not a place that sees necessarily a lot of political revolution and turmoil that comes from within, because the internal energy sort of within for most Indians is kind of stable. It's kind of stasis. It's really focused toward the needs and the identity in your own caste. It's not it's not like something that's sort of constantly the people at the bottom are trying to overturn the top necessarily. Political centralization isn't really that common. Most people at the bottom, their sense of identity doesn't come from whoever's in the government, right? It doesn't come from whoever the emperor or king or chieftain is or something like this. It sort of comes from who your people are, who your kin is, what your caste is, and what that means for you. So like people's identity is pretty low to the ground here, and so they're sort of resisting centralization. Another continuity we look at is geographic, right? These monsoons, these winds that come in, and monsoons we'll talk about in the Indian Ocean in terms of how that affects navigation. But in India, what that just means is sort of farming seasons, right? Rainy seasons and farming seasons, and seasons when you can predict trade ships coming in, and seasons when you predict trade ships coming out, right? The seasons of the monsoon kind of dictate economic life and social life in many ways. And religiously, Hinduism is still the dominant expression. There's a smaller number of Buddhists, but they are going to be leaving. We'll talk about that in a little bit, or that's going to be driven out, and we're going to have the new religion moving in. Let's talk about that. So that new religion coming in is going to be Islam. So Muslims introduced Islam into India roughly before this period of time, all right? But we're going to see a Muslim presence in India. And there's going to be, these two existing, let's say, uneasily, all right? Sometimes fine, but oftentimes not, and that'll be another sort of a disruptive continuity through history, through Indian history that we'll study all the way right up, well, really to the present day in South Asia. What are some key contrasts between Islam and Hinduism? What can you kind of bring to mind? What would you guess? There's probably a lot. All right, there's generally speaking, a pretty stark difference between them. So when we think about this, we think about monotheism versus polytheism, right? Now, again, Hinduism's polytheism is somewhat debatable, like we talked about before, but certainly Muslims, who say there is no God but God and Allah is his prophet, are going to bristle when Hindus are talking about, well, there's millions of gods. It's like, no, that's not going to jive, right? The egalitarianism of Islam versus caste right? So the egalitarianism of anyone can practice, anyone can sort of become a one who submits to God, and all who submit to God are equal before God, versus caste, which says they're just very different ways of seeing literally what human beings are. Different sacred texts entirely, the Vedas versus the Quran. Different views on religious artwork, that's for sure. All right, Muslims are going to have a much more rigid set of rules regarding religious artwork, and I put basically every metaphysical area about what is the world and how does it work. I mean, it's like all these function very, very differently from each other. So finding that middle ground is not easy. It's not going to be simple. All right. So Muslims in South Asia, the first major Muslim state in South Asia is called the Delhi Sultanate, and it is responsible. It's a pretty major political force across northern India, as you can see there. Today, that is a lot of places like Pakistan, Bangladesh, some of those places, Nepal. This Delhi Sultanate will last for several centuries. It'll eventually give way to something called the Mughal dynasty. We'll learn about that down the road, though. But here with this introduction of Islam, in a place where that is Hindu, you're going to see sort of an interesting cultural blending or cultural syncretism. We'll learn that word more later on. Even the image that you look in here, were sort of like the Hindu-style domes and Hindu-style architecture with a Muslim minaret, right? That's where you go, I guess I can see the mixing that's going on here. Now, unlike when Islam is introduced in all kinds of other places, in Central Asia, in the Middle East, in parts of Southeast Europe and North Africa, when Islam is introduced in India, it does not become the prevailing predominant religious expression, right? I put the estimate, I think, from our textbook, where maybe 25% of the population in the Delhi Sultanate becomes Muslim. Everyone else is Hindu, with a small minority of Buddhists. Why? Right? Why did Islam not catch fire in South Asia and not become something that everybody's converting to in the way that it did in, like we said, North Africa or the Middle East? Why not? Well, I'll point us to a couple factors. I'm not going to say any one of these is the biggest. I'm going to let you be the ones that consider and analyze this. But let's say Hinduism is old. Hinduism has its roots deep, deep, deep down in Indian culture. Right, and again, like I put on the next bullet point, like the difference between Islam and Hinduism is not subtle. It's not like, so we kind of changed this and tweaked that and kind of shown this up a little bit, and what do you know? We're all converting to Islam now. Like to make that switch involves an uprooting of deep, deep roots. That doesn't happen simply, and it just simply didn't. It didn't happen on a vast scale. Of course, we've learned, there's always economic incentives, sometimes political incentives for people to convert. But on some level, when people's identity is rooted in caste, which is part of Hinduism, then they're not just going to simply give that up. I mean, your identity is like, that's not just close to what you are. That's like your sense of what you are. Buddhism is driven out. All right. It's sort of like Buddhism as a minority group is really driven out by the Muslims primarily. And that, if Buddhism had not spread out of India a little bit and had not already kind of gotten connected on the Silk Road, and from there it's going to go to China and Japan and Korea, and it's also going to go west. If that hadn't happened already, Buddhism would just be kind of extinguished. It wouldn't be part of our course. Buddhism, where it would live on, would not be in the place of its birth, so to speak. It sort of gets wiped out right here. Muslims and Hindus did not do a lot of intermingling. They tended to have separate communities and be separate from one another. But 25%, let's say Muslims became a large minority group in India, but it's the large minority group that had political power. That's a funny one. Let's do a quick check-in here. All right. So we're going to read our citation first. Al-Biruni, a Muslim scholar at the court of Mahmud of Ghazni, early 11th century. So a Muslim scholar here in South Asia. Let's see what he has to say. He says, the Hindus believe that there is no country but theirs, no nation like theirs, no kings like theirs, no religion like theirs, no science like theirs. They are haughty, foolishly vain, self-conceited, and dense. They are by nature slow in communicating that which they know, and they take the greatest possible care to withhold it from men of another caste among their own people, still much more, of course, from any foreigner. All right, so lovely, considerate words about the Hindus. Let's look at our questions. Top question: which historical development most likely explains al-Biruni's interpretation of Indian culture? So what development most likely explains al-Biruni's interpretation of Indian culture? A, the founding of Islam. B, the Islamic Golden Age. Is this what best explains his negative interpretation? C, the expansion of the Umayyads in the Sindh. Or D, the creation of the Delhi Sultanate. What's our guess? Next one. Which element of al-Biruni's point of view does he express most clearly in the passage? So all these might be parts of his point of view. Which part of his point of view is expressed most clearly in the text here? A, he was a monotheist. B, he grew up in a region to the west of India. C, he belonged to the group that had conquered the people he was talking about. Or D, he was a Muslim writing about Hindus. Identify what you think the answers would be here. What would be your best guess? The answer on each. On to Southeast Asia. All right, moving on down. Here we see the Angkor Wat Temple, one of my favorite locations to just look at and imagine here. A Hindu temple transformed into a Buddhist temple in modern-day Cambodia. Southeast Asia, what do we know about this place? Southeast Asia is a place. When you think of this place, I want you to think trade. All right, here it is, kind of wedged between South Asia and East Asia. Right, on the rim of the Indian Ocean and the Pacific Ocean. Right, and it's kind of a gateway. It's a trade gateway. And so the kingdoms that we're going to look at here tend to make their hay, and they gain their power through trade. These are key stops on the Indian Ocean trade network. These are key trade ports. You can see all these archipelagos, right? All these sort of like island chains. And if you can control these, and you can sort of control the trade that's coming through these areas, you're like literally controlling the gateways. There is a mix, all right? Islam is introduced through traders, through merchants here. It's not introduced through war, but through merchants. There's a great number of Buddhists here that we see that here. And then even before that, there was a large number of Hindus, all right? So the Hinduism that's present in places like, the Khmer Empire, we don't see as heavy an influence of the caste system here, though there are Hindu temples. And again, when you see Islam, I want you to be thinking within Islam, the Islam here was spread by merchants and missionaries, Sufi missionaries, all right, sort of mystics who've come through. So this wasn't sort of a conquest by the sword or anything like that. So let's just, as we're talking about this place, let's put it into two categories: sea kingdoms and land-based kingdoms. All right, the Majapahit Kingdom is a sea kingdom, modern-day Malaysia. All right, and so you can see basically the dark blue area is like the area of the sea lanes that they are able to control, and because you're able to control that, then because you're able to control those sea lanes, then that's what you can tax, right? You can tax and protect all the ships that come through, and the ships that come through that haven't, paid the tax, then you can make sure that they aren't protected, so to speak, right? You can attack them as needed. And there's spices and gold and silk and all other kinds of fun stuff moving through here. Majapahit is a Buddhist state, although all these places figure out trade works when you let in merchants of all kinds. All right, religious tolerance is good for business, and so religious tolerance becomes the rule of thumb in these places for that reason. In terms of a land-based kingdom, we'll point at the Khmer Empire, which is modern-day Cambodia, the Angkor Kingdom. So we see that in this pink area right there. What you have here, this Khmer Empire is known for being able to command the river networks. All right, like this is a tropical zone, lots of rain, and these rivers are a trick. All right, they're able to irrigate the Mekong River and these other rivers in order to sort of do widespread irrigation, which means widespread farming, right? Their irrigation and drainage allows them to really farm this, and that can support a large population. And they developed this kind of rice we'll learn about later that's like really, really important in world history called champa rice. We'll learn that down the line. And this Angkor Wat temple that you see here, I want you to associate it with Southeast Asia, associate it with this Khmer Empire. It's a Hindu temple that was converted to a Buddhist temple. Sort of like, we'll learn about how the Hagia Sophia in Constantinople was converted into a Muslim mosque once that becomes Istanbul. So the ruins that are there, like that temple, is sort of a testament to the religious mix or the cultural mix there. A quick check-in question. Which of the following factors best explains the distribution of Muslim populations shown on this map? What would you say? Which factor best explains the population of Muslim groups shown on this map? Where there's Muslims, the dark areas are Muslim areas, so there's lots of them. What best explains it? Religious pilgrimage, merchant activity, imperialism, or forced migration? Merchant activity. Students, that's it for this video. You have a homework reading assignment, but this is, again, I'm hoping that this has just sort of equipped you with a little bit of background information and knowledge and about what's going on in this part of the world. I'm looking forward to seeing you guys tomorrow. Good job, and have a happy Monday.